Okay, so the third session is thinking how we can tackle these issues in practice. Everything we talked about so far looks great on paper, looks great in simulations, but how do we create this missing link, this missing piece of the puzzle for us as a lab? And the name of my lab suggested is the Holy Grail. So this is why I'm so happy to have Jakob with us. So Dr. Jakob Stromann Andersen is a partner and director of innovation and sustainability at Henning Larsen. Jakob's work focuses on integrating environmental performance into cutting-edge architecture. Henning Larsen is known for blending practice with research. And personally, Jakob, your 2011 paper in Energy and Buildings, I was reading when I was sitting in Munich, had a significant impact on my own work. How we can integrate things together, how we can expand the spectrum of environmental performance analysis. So this is making this meeting between us a meaningful moment of academic closure. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. My name is Jakob, and as John said, I'm coming from the industry. I'm not coming from academia. I used to be in academia, but now I'm in the industry. I'm also very happy to come here. I'm pretty tired of talking with clients about cost and fees and revenue. So this is also a room of freedom for me being here. But one thing I just want to highlight that the beer cats was here. That's the Cincinnati. They're called the beer cats. And actually, Charles that was here, he was my first client in the US. So we designed the building that Charles educating in, lecturing at the moment at the College of Business. And actually, we want that school or that college based on the data-driven methodology. I was traveling to Cincinnati at that time and went into the campus, and they have this main street. They call it the main street at the campus. That is like a pedestrian street that connects the one end of the campus to the other end of the campus. You know, the US campus, like small villages, the big one. And this was a north-south facing road, or pedestrian road, but it was so windy because all the wind come from the mainland, from the inland. So it was like no one was actually using that street. It was very quick to walk one direction, but if you had me to walk against the wind, it was very, very tough. So what we decided was not to design a building. We decided to change the master plan. So we decided to place the building in the end of that main street to make a blocker for the wind. So the whole storytelling was not about the building, but how it changed the whole campus and the life of campus. And luckily, Charles and the College of Cincinnati decided us as the design architects for that one, and we won the competition. And so that is also a storytelling about how computational design, microclimate actually can also convince clients to take the right decisions. That was just a story of good to see Cincinnati again here. Just how many of you're all architects, right? No engineers here? Raise your hand. All right, there's one engineer. How many are computational designers here? I think all of us, yeah, all of you. I will also raise my hand when someone called me engineer, I will raise my hand. Someone called me architects, I will raise my hand. Someone called me computational design, I will raise my hand. I think it's super important when we talk about computational design that we are not like someone sitting in a corner of office. Be part of the design team, be part of the design community. My background is research. I'm trained civil engineers, did my PhD with Technical University in Denmark and Berkeley in the US. So I have a right brain that understands numbers and columns and algorithm. And then I have trained my left brain being with Henning Larsen for the last 15 years. So into architecture, space and colors. And so that is also what I'd like to present today. Some numbers, but also a lot of beautiful images. I have many slides, so please stop me if it gets too boring. Henning Larsen Architects were rooted in Scandinavia, born out of Denmark, Copenhagen. Henning Larsen is not with us anymore, but his name remains. He was one of the first architects in Denmark that traveled around the world and did architecture globally. He did the foreign minister in Saudi Arabia as his first project. We are around 700 architects, also quite a huge organization, and we do projects like all over. We have design hubs in Singapore, and quite often in Singapore, but also in the US and around Germany and Scandinavia. We do a lot of different projects, but there's a lot of things like in a bigger scale. So it's a lot of bit about campuses, a lot about transit, train station, harbor fronts. We also do the left-hand corner is the wastewater facility, the biggest one coming up in Denmark. Normally that will be a very much a smelly thing that you put in the outskirts of the city. Here we put it downtown. It will be the best picnic spot, and they also turn their business case upside down, not earning more money of cleaning water, but earning money on selling resources, polymers, waste heat, and algae. I just want to show one of the biggest projects we are doing at the moment. You're pointing that is, you know the line that we are doing in Saudi Arabia. I think this one has the biggest impact and even a more environmental friendly impact than the line has. This is even, yeah. It's called the North-South Corridor. It's in Sydney, in Singapore. It's going to connect the south part of Singapore with the north part, turning a highway, weaving into a green corridor, weaving the city together. We won that project last year, competing some of the big companies around the world. And here you can see that it's some of the image. I think there's a lot of. See about the trees, you showed that it will be a nice space, hopefully a nice space to walk under the canopies of the trees here. But as you asked me, both do architecture, landscape, and urban design, and we don't have any it's like a mix of teams. So we don't have a dedicated urban team, but they work together closely. And I think that was also what we saw a lot of research today. The barrier between urban and building design need to get even closer. We have 3 pillars when we're designing. It's of course about the center one. We need to do great design. Design excellence is a big part of it. But then sustainability and circularity goes into everything what we do. And then the research and data. That's something that I've been trying to train Henning Larsen for the last 15 years. That is again my right brain coming there. But we have a deep understanding that data actually can help us win more competitions. So that is also part of the business case here. And we also have very much a culture of curiosity. We do a lot of R&D projects. We do a lot of industrial PhD projects that we are funding through Henning Larsen. You can see up on the left-hand corner, we built the first school out of straw in Denmark. It was a small test pilot. We got some external funding. We got a really ambitious client. Thought that why not use something that is left over from agriculture and bring it into building design to lower the embodied carbon that we talked about this morning. It's inside we used, instead of using a lot of mechanical ventilation, we used purely natural ventilation. We used eelgrass from the beaches of Denmark as filters for the heavy particle from the outdoor. So this louver here, you have an eelgrass filter inside it. And 2 weeks ago, this was announced as one of the candidates for the Miss Randero Prize for innovative project. So a small one. But again, it's also about scaling. So the next project we did, this was a 200 square meters of school. Now we go to Holland and building a 200,000 square meters of logistic center in timber and straw at the moment in Leidenstad. You can come up and see the building site. At the moment, we are sampling the straw panel for that logistics center. It's going to be fully timber and fully straw paneling. Highly ambitious client that not only focusing on doing good, but also are very much focused on the EU taxonomy and the ESG target in the company and want to manifest them into the design. And here's the logistics center. Normally, we will not go for a logistics center, but when there's high ambition, high environmental ambition, that is something we strive for. We also do culture building. This is the world of Volvo. Maybe you know the Ferrari world. I've been to that in Milan. This is the same in sweden. It's a Zlatan world, but the world of Volvo. And in Sweden, they have what they call allemansrätt, is a right to nature. So everyone has right to nature. You cannot fence in nature. So this idea that you can go to this building, you can all walk the roof, you can see some of the exhibition without buying a ticket, that was a big part of it. And here you can see it from the highway. It's a timber structure. And here's the, and this is very much also what we call the basic of computational design. This is Leonardo that was part of the design team, understanding how much, very much work together with VHAG in Austria, the manufacturer of the lowland beams, to understanding what is the manufacturing process and informing that into the design process. So it was not done like from a pure aesthetic point of view, it was actually done by understanding the machinery in Austria, how it can produce the spans and bringing that into the design process. So again, computation, this is like basic of computational design and all that, but again, it's bringing it into the design, and we call it like a digital craftsmanship. It's a way of crafting digital tools, another way of using a manual from A to B. It's about crafting your own workflow that fits into the project and the design you're working with, and the materials and the manufacturing process. Then we do a lot of applied research. We have a PhD candidate. You can see there's a young guy on the left-hand side there, with short hair, a very young guy that started a PhD journey at Henning Larsen Architects. I was trained as an industrial PhD. And now we have been having around 15, 16 through. We have been focused very much on energy design. I did also my paper on energy design, and we've been looking into indoor environment, social impact, sensoring technology, CO2, and now we're good in doing a lot of research on climate adaptation. She's sitting at Singapore at the moment, and we have 3 more upcoming young guys looking into main ecosystems. Jesse is looking into biodiversity matrix. And it's out of Tel Aviv, is looking into AI technology and regenerative urban planning. And they're all done with a university partner and us as an industrial partner. It's a special setup we have in Denmark, so it's sponsored by the Innovation Fund Denmark, that half the salary they get from them, and then you're employed by Henning Larsen. And also, if some of you like to have a research day, we are very open for 2-3 months research day together with our PhD community to explore some design scenarios, being with the design team. So again, if you want to join Copenhagen, it's a good time to join Copenhagen. It's not as hot here, but it's from spring is coming and people are smiling. So
be careful.
yeah, it's been totally empty here next semester. Again, the computational design skills need to be tailored into the design process. So a lot of the things we do is communicated into how we also communicate the architectural ideas. This is just like the list of services. You will see that's like taking a few hours to do those iterations. So we have a computation design team that supports with those analysis. A lot of that what you see today, microclimate, solar game, wind simulation. And again, it's about tailor-making the analysis. This is actually, we have sensors sitting at the Lindner. This is from Lindner College of Business, where we are monitoring the flow of students and how they use the social spaces. There was a big issue when you work with the US campuses. You can only get public funding for defined spaces, that is lecture rooms, office spaces, but all what we call the social rooms, social gallery rooms are called leftover spaces, corridor spaces. And we try to convince the client, and luckily we had a very ambitious client, so we did a big atrium, but we also promised them to document there was a lot of learning in that atrium. So we put up sensors to actually monitoring how long the students were in that space, and we could document that they also did learning in that space. After the lectures, they went out there doing social interaction. And we was also so lucky that just opened it just before COVID. So all lecture rooms, classrooms was closed, so people could gather in the social spaces, and the university was super happy about that. But again, it was about pushing the business case for the university by using data to document the effect of it. And again, it's also about communication. Here we're doing a lot of microstorm, like in Denmark, Scandinavia, it's super windy. We don't like the wind, it's cold. So here we are in Norway. We are protecting, doing the building structure, so we protect the inner courtyards and creating small microclimates. This is our virtual sandbox. there's a scanner on top of it, and it scans the topography of the sand, and it directly imported into our Rhino model, so the landscape architects can go and play with the sand, and then they can go back to the computer and play with the topography in the computer. Not that many landscape architects play with the sand, it's mostly our client that play with the sand, but so we keep it in there, it's super fun. So when people girls have kids, they go and play, and when the clients come in, they go and play, so that's like, you need to treat the client as your kids. Always, yeah. Another case is about the Topic Civic Center is in Toronto. It's also a story about how microclimate and data-driven design make us win a competition. It broke ground last year. It's a new civic center in the outskirts of Toronto, a neighborhood called Etobicoke. This is an image of me going to the site for the first time, and I have my small weather station with me. And it was super chilly and windy. You can see the site is really open. We did a lot of CFD on the wind. There's wind coming in from the west, and we used that to inform the design process. So building up a structure that shelters, turn it back to the predominant wind direction, and create a plaza in front of it towards the south and protect it from the wind. So the whole massing of the building was created by the microclimate analysis and understanding of the local site. We also did some computation design, some CFD fluid dynamic, documenting the effect of it. And you can see the red colors indicate where there are shelters, and the blue indicate the speed up of the wind. And again, it was very much also informing where to put the plaza, and also where to put where we don't want people to be the loading dock. The loading dock should not be on the sheltered sunny corner. It should be where there's windy and not nice to be. And we use the UTCI. We also seen that today. You know, when you read the newspaper, you can see there's the outdoor temperature, but it's not the perceived temperature. Being in the sun in the sheltered corner of the park is much more comfort being on the windy street. So that's understanding, telling that to the client was important. And here's some renderings. But what made us win that project was not like the client, it was the client. There was those people there on the left-hand side. The Etobicoke came from an old civic center where they have the farmers market, and the farmers market was super popular. People came there every Sunday. They came in from the farmland to sell their veggies, and people gathering there. It was very much a social space. So there was a big concern that will die out, moving the civic center to the new spot. By actually doing those microclimate simulations, we could promise to expand the farmers market with 3 weeks in every shoulder season in the spring and the autumn. And that made us win that project, that we have a promise, and the promise the civic center could give to the city was that they could expand the farmers market, and that made the process much more easier with the public debate around it. So again, understanding where the impact are here was the impact of the farmers market, and the farmers came in selling the veggies on the Sunday morning. But again, the challenge is not about, like in Canada, things are cold. It's about expanding the summer season, but we also know globally that the heat island is taking effect, and there's a lot of people that are affected by it. Not only people that can afford it, but also people that cannot afford it. Homeless people, but people working on building site. Here we took an approach to do some active cooling. We teamed up with the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, and seek some funding to do like a pavilion, cooling pavilion that can be designed for disassembly and shipped around for when the heat waves comes into the US cities and hit the US cities. And the idea was that was technology developed by UPenn, like active cooling, water-driven cooling, like a membrane, a two-layer membrane, and yeah, this was radiative cooling. And they do some mock-up prototyping here. We are doing some analytic testing of the technology. And now we are doing the first pilot on the Governor Island in New York. It's going to be up in the summertime. So you can go there as a tourist, but its aim is to also go for building site to test it. And this is the plan of it. And here you see there's some rendering of the. But this is the idea that we need to imitate. We cannot only use passive, but we also need to have some kind of active element into our cities. And it's designed with Doodle beans and again, also how does this urban heat light and affect our cities and how we design? You know all about the Carlos Moreno, the 50-minute city, the LG cities, how we navigate in the city. But how will this change over time? You know, we can need to be within 15 minutes of healthcare, grocery shops, daycare. But what about in the future? So we did a small test. This is Singapore. It's just a very basic one. It's not having any urban typography, any urban landscape. But you can see you can choose if you are biking or you're walking, and then you can choose what kind of climate scenario you're working with. Is it based on the historic climate or predicted climate scenarios in the future? And the colors indicate how long can you bike or walk without getting a heat stress. So indicating that the 15-minute city maybe will change to a 10-minute city in the future if we don't imitate or bring in some elements that can support people walking the streets. You can test this online. There's an open source map online. I will share the presentation after so you can go into the link. Then I will have one example. Is the time running? Is it okay? Yeah. Yeah. One example of how we use generative design to inform some of the city plan. We have seen some generative design today. This is a new development called Fælleby in outskirts of Copenhagen. It's this neighborhood. It's near the metro line. So it's like an open field, and we need to design a new city, and we need to also optimize that. The idea is to create a city that is inspired by Christiania. You know, some of you know been to Christiania? Yeah, yes, where you can smoke it's like the free city of Copenhagen. Yeah, they have the pusher. We don't want to do a pusher street here, but we want to have the same idea of having a car-free city, a city that is very kind of low scale and have this own identity of being self-grown. It's also it's so a totally wooden city. Everything is built in wood. Both prefab and local. And the idea was here to be inspired by the Copenhagen block, the typology of a city block, and open it up to like what we see in the villages with having a small pond at the center and make a new typology. So we created this typology that was there was 3 neighborhoods. So this was the first neighborhood that having a center, and then it's open up to nature, inviting nature in. Everyone have access to nature and view to nature. And here's one of the zoom-ins of the typology. It's like a mix of low-income housing, 40% low-income housing, social housing, and then private housing combination. Then we did some optimization, but we didn't do the generative design on a bare field. We did the design scenario, the design strategy, design concept, and then used the generative design to optimize that based on some of the parameters we have seen today, the daylight, the view to nature, wind comfort. And then we did a lot of iteration to be able to densify. We was able to densify by 10%, and the client, of course, liked that because that improved their business case without compromising daylight. We a lot of reducing daylight, but still fulfilling the daylight requirement. And that was done without a design team. Here you can see that the 3 neighborhoods that is structured around the same typology, opening up to nature. And here's one of the first neighborhood coming up. It's in the building process at the moment. There's a road going around, but there's no parking, so you can go in as fire trucks and ambulances. But you will have to park. There's a parking structure outside the city, and you need to rent a bike to Christiania bike to go in with your kids. So that's also a new way of living here without having a car in a car front of your home. Then we looked also at daylight optimization. What Elam are doing also, how does this influence the way we design the facade, the openings, the balconies. Optimizes across identifying the red colors indicate where we need to do something extra, where we cannot have balconies, but we need to do bigger openings. did a lot of facade testing, inspiration for the facade. But then we run a lot of daylight simulation to also train the engine, so we don't need to run for all the apartment. And we were inspired by Theodore. This is an old study by Theodore, but it talks about like how you can predict the daylight analysis instead of simulating them using AI. I think that is where we also will see the first disruption of the multi-physics simulation, that AI can, instead of running those CFD and daylight simulation, we can predict them based on the trained data. And here you can see one of the renderings where you can see on the right-hand side, there's the sunny side where you have the balcony, and the other side is the more shaded side there. You don't put the balcony. It seems very logical, but also if you go around the city, it's not very logical for many architects. So again, try to bring some of the logic into the design. And then we by optimizing, we got more access to nature and more view to nature, and also more view to the greenery. I have one last case. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. It's an AI case, so it goes super fast. I'm not saying anything AI is doing for me. But we are testing, of course, as we heard today, about how AI will influence our design workflow, but also understanding that AI is biased. Here we ask AI Midjourney to do a Henning Larsen design built out of straw, and you saw our straw buildings. It didn't really answer what we expected it to do. So again, also be a bit critical about data. It can only generate images based on known data, and not something that is innovative. But also understanding that data is power. That's something we try to understand at Henning Larsen. We need to own data. It's scary, but it's something we need to understand. And we also need to understand that data is also have an environmental footprint. What we see in the data center is enormous. The amount of energy produced in those data centers is crazy. Now makes us want to go into nuclear just to be able to provide enough energy for the data center. So a lot of things to ethical be aware of. But something I think that is wrong about AI, we saw some of the images today about AI generated city planning. If you Google AI city, you will see something from Blade Runner, something totally futuristic. But I believe we will get more of this if we use AI. We will get much more fine grid understanding of data, people, that we can tailor our cities to for much more diversity than we used to do. So the totally opposite image of when you Google stuff. And we also see there's a different need where AI come in. We see there's a different need from our clients. Before we need to manage a lot, we need to deliver a design product that is not. We do less design competition than we did 10 years ago. It's much more interview-based competition. We are not designing for the client. We are designing very much with the client, with the data of the client. So the whole thing about working with client and data is changing these years, and that AI can support us in that. And again, it's also about understanding what is under the iceberg. Architects often see what's on the pictures, but a lot of the information under the iceberg inform our design, and that we can bring up using AI, understanding data. This is an example. I know lilac tree. You also have lilac tree here, right? It's native to here. In Denmark, every garden have a lilac tree, but it's not native to Denmark at all. So there's no insect living in the lilac. They're beautiful to look at, but no insect are living. They cannot get into the nectar. So that's something that have been brought from Israel to Copenhagen, Denmark, and everyone liked it. But going under the iceberg, there's no biodiversity at all. Take an oak tree. There's 450 insects living from and at an oak tree. So much more when planting an oak tree in the garden. So it's getting the data up to the surface, creating the value. This is a sketch by Nitzan about how he see AI, that we have a lot of data, get more data from our client. But what AI can do, it cannot fit in the puzzle, but it can organize the puzzle for us. So I think that is also what we try to do. We try to use it. We decided to go into a design competition for urban plan in Copenhagen, only using AI. We don't want to draw a single line in Rhino or Revit. We were generating all images, all data based on AI, and we were very open about it. it was also because we will never go into an open competition. It will cost us too much. It will cost around $15,000 to enter competition, but this one we did to $5,000. So we minimize our budget by using different technologies here. So the idea was here to do some data harvesting, do some design recommendation based on the data harvesting, do some AI image generation, and give the client some key takeaway based on that. And what kind of data we looked at? We looked at the friends we had before, Mark Zuckerberg, and Facebook, the social media data from Facebook and Instagram. So we scraped social data from the geolocation of the neighborhood, the Reftaløen, and then we used different AI tools to identify what was on the images and what was the prompt related to the images, like is there a tree, and is there a positive and negative prompt related to that, to identify the public understanding of how we've done 2 minutes. It's okay? Okay, good. But also just the data is again biased. Every year there's happening what's it called Copenhagen Hell event out there, and you will get a lot of funny data if you don't understand that it's like a event happening there. It could be a fun city to AI generate based on the data from Copenhagen Hell, but you also need to sort in the data. And that's also what we did. And actually what we saw here, there was a lot of people, it's an old harbor front, so it's very industrial, but there was actually a lot of people taking a picture of nature out there and related it to something positive. So that's what we used to do a lot of prompts to identify how we can reuse the existing structure, bringing nature closer to the neighborhood. And then we did some recommendation for the client, how to preserve the existing structure, how to do some spaces that are large and flexible, also bringing in nature. And the good thing that we went into that open competition and we were one of the winners, and now we've been invited to the closed competition in the design for that. And we could never done that without testing AI here in that kind of workflow. And that we also do, this is our Andersen toolkit, AI toolkit. I will also share with you after, just for inspiration. We are always testing new ideas, and the scene of AI is changing every week. So it's not a leadership decision, it's very much a button up. So all the good ideas, all the good new tools coming from the new students joining Andersen, so that we're super aware of. I think I will end here.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, seems like you have really more interesting stuff to show us, but thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to open the floor for questions, and I want to tell you that I'm going to speak with Jakob a lot, and I don't want to ask my questions. Just a hint. I want you to ask questions. Yes, and already Jong-min asked a question.
Well, thanks for the presentation, really impressive, many interesting projects. My question is about your team. In your company, what's the model of how's your team working with other teams? Are you like, do they mandatorily require to work with you, or do you function as an internal consulting firm, or how does it work? They pay you internally, or what's the model behind?
It's a super good question. That we are definitely not a corner of the office. My team, we are around 20 people globally. We are a global team, but we go across sustainability, computational design, and innovation and R&D. It's a combination of what I call creative engineers and nerdy architects. But all of my teams are also billable. They need to be working on projects. So I'm not so to speak, a cost center that create negative revenue. I also need to have a business. So that is also the focus. What we do here, we bring to the client when we do life cycle assessment, wind analysis. It's a service that we sell to the client and get paid for. So my team, some of the project we have services in-house that we provide to the client and earn revenue from, but most of my team are sitting with the design team. So when we do the resource planning, when a competition comes in, I'm scanning and I say, we need someone that are good of microclimate here because that is important. Then we bring those competences out in the design team, and they will be working with the design team for 3 weeks, 2 months, and then join back again into the team. So a lot of the table in my teams are empty all the time because they're sitting out with the design teams. So we very much try to enforce that into the design. A lot of companies, big ideas, PXN, A lot of companies have tried to create small spin-out within the company. We have decided not to do that because we think that will be distant to where we make the impact. We make the impact on the project. So we very much embedded into the design, into the teams all the time, and not creating a independent entity that have a brand and identity. So we don't have any names. We are just nerdy architects and creative engineers that. Yeah. But again, it's very much also like when we do something, we tell the client that this make value for them, and they also need to pay us for that value. So it's like, yeah, it's sometimes tough to have that negotiation. But yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other question? Yes.
This was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. I will follow up from this. Usually what we hear is that the pace of the project delivery, the timeline that from the clients that you get does not necessarily match with the computational design efforts that you need to do. Because, I mean, let's take generative design, parametric modeling, some things. It takes time to set these up, et cetera, et cetera. So I was wondering how you deal with this timeline issue and the fast pace of delivery.
I think that we have been growing this team for the last 10 years, so we don't see it that difficult in the basic generative workflow doing microclimate analysis. As you saw on the rainbow colors, a lot of things takes few hours, 5 hours, 4 hours. So we have integrated a workflow. We have been working where we work on a Revit workflow. We do that globally across. That have been like a big effort for us to every design team need to work in the same workflow, because then we can implement those analysis super quickly. It's sometimes difficult when we bring our PhD into the competition, because you're right, they go fast and they need to go fast. So that's a lot of timing to understand when does the PhD need a case study and be flexible around that. But we try to enforce that the PhD also sitting with the project teams and try to test some of their research with the project team. But it's getting very much about workflow, optimizing the workflow, having good servers and stuff like that. All the backend need to be in place to be able to run them. But I think we are pretty good at running those microclimate and generative design. It's not, doesn't seem as a big issue to timing.
Sounds too good to be true, actually. Yes.
So thank you. It was an amazing presentation. It's amazing to see the type of work you're doing. And as you said, Andersen is a big office, and a lot of the big offices have these innovation R&D teams. But at least here in Israel, most of the offices are much smaller and have much less resources. What would you recommend to such a small office to do that can do a bit of what you're doing?
I fully recognize this is also an issue we see in Denmark, that the big players have big muscles, and that like also squeezing the industry a lot. But also what I see, especially within the AI, that is coming like so quick, and it's coming from the students and from the. So I think there's a lot of potential from the small offices understanding the workflow where they can make impact within the AI stuff. But again, I don't have any clear answers on it. We see a tendency that the big offices are winning more and more, and it's been more and more difficult for the small office to get in on the big project, also because you have to have the references and you need to be able to deliver. But again, we also see small offices in Denmark that work with new technologies and get a small like a niche. We have few Danish offices now working with Rand Earth, and they've been super good at working with that, also with 3D printing, and they are creating their own business, solid business around that, but a bit more narrow for the focus. So I think for the smaller office, more to focus on where do they think they have their niche in the market, and not being too broad on doing everything, because they no way they can compete with a big office that have muscles and capacities to. But yeah.
Very interesting. I love the presentation. I wanted to ask about the team and the tools that you are developing. if it's only your team working with the tools, or do you also develop tools for other teams to work with?
The whole mantra in the team is that the success is that we don't want to work with the tool, that it has been embedded out with the architectural practice. We see this a lot with the microclimate at the moment, that the design team run them by themselves. And of course, they come to us or sometimes to consult also. It's not only to be able to run an analysis, it's also to understand the result that comes out of it. And like, so that's the thing. But the aim is to develop the tool so they can be so much integrated into the architectural process that they don't need us anymore. I think my success is when my team closed down, that there's no need for me anymore. That is not where I work against.
Hi, thank you for the great presentation. You introduced yourself in the beginning and told you were in the academia and then moved to practice as a professional master student. I wanted to ask if you have a few tips on this kind of journey. Mostly we see people doing the opposite journey, maybe going to practice and then coming back to the academia. What kind of tips would you have for someone who is interested in practice, but also in the research field?
I think we have a super good question, because we have both cases, someone that have been in practice and then did a PhD and then continue into academia, but also a lot of our PhD have been continuing into Henrik Larsen into a practice journey. But I really think it's good to enforce this like collaboration across academia and practice, that you spend a few months doing your academic PhD within a company, working with them, working with their case studies, understanding how quick a competition are going and like the pace of stuff. And I think that's where magic are happening and where we find the best candidate that are ready to take it from academia to practice. But the PhD that you saw on the list, that they are all what we call industrial PhD, so they are not employed by the academia, they are employed by the company, but they spend physically 50% of their time with academia and 50% with the company. But they also have the same obligation to publish research papers, but they're just using the case studies to mature the research.
We have an online question, actually connecting to the PhD that you have in Henrik Larsen, and they, from Mohammed, he asked, how do you achieve the optimal balance between accommodating their research ambition and the necessary trial and error inherent in that? First, the demands of design production, which often involves strict deadlines and more routine tasks like document control and the sheet delivery.
Again, it's also a good question. It's around finding the right balance. But I also been in an industrial PhD. I've been in the same situation to balance this, like being at academia, being at the company, and it's super important to communicate. Being in the company is not being at work; it's also being in the academia and using the case studies. Some of my papers, some of my articles that have been most cited is the one that are case-based studies, something that are applicable, adaptable, or like applied into projects. So I think also just to advocate for the PhD candidate that a case study that seems very banal from an academic point of view can have kind of high scientific outreach, because it's like applied into, and you get this from understanding how can you do an analytic study in 3 weeks with the pace of a competition. So again, it's to find that balance. We also have PhDs that we haven't succeeded with, and we, to be honest, that have been sometimes that the PhD candidate have felt that being in academia have been a real pressure, because that when he was at the office, he felt that he was at work and he couldn't do his research, and that match. So it's about doing the right match between the academic supervisor and the company. We always have academic supervisor and a company supervisor. And often we also have an advisory board that's a combination from academia and from practice. So that's common understanding before you go into the PhD. It's super important that you are aligned, that being in the company is not work, it's also research.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jakob. The idea of using the PhD pathway as an integration between practice and academia and everything we talked about here, I think is a great business plan. We talked a lot about business plans, but this is a great, I think, way to go.